People in the diocese have asked me to speak about Exodus 90, and I'm here with John Joy, who helps with formation in our diocese, to speak about that. Exodus 90 is a spiritual process primarily geared towards men, but when you understand what it is, really anyone can embrace it. It's focused on prayer and asceticism, and we know that prayer and asceticism are essential if we are serious about the spiritual life and are truly seeking holiness, to become as much like Jesus Christ as possible in this life. When we look at the saints, we realize that the key to their holiness, the secret to their spiritual vitality, was their relationship with the Lord. And so a Christian who does not pray essentially ends up not really being a Christian, because prayer is our lifeline to God, and it's through prayer that our spirit, our mind, our heart, our will are purified of self, so that we really enter into this saving relationship with God. Coupled with prayer is asceticism, and that can sound like a scary word. We think of monks on perpetual fast or hermits out in the wilderness. But asceticism is really, how do I allow the Lord to empty me of ego, of selfishness, of self, so that there's more room, there's more space for God to act in my life. Lent is the season when we take those ascetical practices perhaps more seriously. But we know as Catholics that are serious about discipleship in the Lord, that asceticism is essential if we really want to become like Christ. That we surround ourselves with so many things, so many distractions, so many perceived needs that are satiated, and we become so full. Spirituality is really, in the end, about allowing ourselves to be emptied out so that we are filled with Christ. And so I just turn to you, John, and just you can certainly fill us in with more details about Exodus 90.
Thank you. This is something that I'm very excited about. So Exodus 90 is a movement only a handful of years old, 4 or 5 years old. I don't know precisely, but an incredible number of men, to the surprise of the creators, I think, have embraced this and found it incredibly fruitful in transforming their lives. What it involves is a serious commitment, like you said, to prayer and asceticism in the context of fraternity, so with the support of other men. To go into just a little bit more detail what the commitments are. So in terms of prayer, it's a 90-day commitment to making a holy hour every day. That can sound like a lot, especially for a married guy with a full-time job and so on. But if we're not making time for prayer, then we're not making time for God. And one of the key pieces of that holy hour is that at least 20 minutes are meant to be spent in silent mental prayer. And that can also be very uncomfortable for a lot of people, but it's essential to make that space for just internal communication with God, where we're not reading a book, not just reciting a rosary, as beautiful and important as that is, to make some time in there to communicate with God and to make room to hear His voice. And then the asceticism, I'll just give you some of the highlights. It is a pretty rigorous program of self-discipline. Cold showers, no sweets, no snacks, no alcohol, regular exercise, fasting 2 days a week on Wednesday and Friday. So every Wednesday and Friday is like an Ash Wednesday and a Good Friday. And then there's a technology fast as well, which I think is so important, especially in our time, to detach ourselves as much as we can from the technological world. So no television, no video games, no non-essential use of computer or internet. And then the fraternity is the third sort of piece of Exodus 90, which is just because this is challenging. That's a pretty heavy commitment to take on. It's a lot easier to do that if you have some other guys with you to do it as well.
Sounds like a spiritual detox program. It's really it may sound radical and hard, but I know people that have embraced Exodus 90 or practices similar to it who have found it life-giving. Once you get through the initial shock of some of the practices, we find that It frees the spirit and just opens up the mind. And I think we know that in terms of things that we give up for Lent or spiritual practices that we embrace, that gives us life and it draws us closer to the Lord. So just encourage everyone to embrace, if not Exodus 90, certainly spiritual practices that are embodied within it. And just to call all of us, including me, to a seriousness about being holy.